Fights in tight spaces blends deck building, turn-based tactics, and the beat-em-up genre into a beautiful mix, and adds rogue-like elements into this mix for good measure. Inspired by action movies like the James Bond and John Wick series, you play as a suave, well-spoken, and sarcastic secret operative by the name of Agent 11. The game has 5 stages with increasing difficulties and ends the experience with a multi-stage boss fight. Though the game uses a lot of tropes of martial arts, action, and espionage movies, it, in and of itself, is quite unique. In the beginning of every run, you can choose a difficulty level. Then you choose a deck that you enhance throughout the stages. These decks represent fighting styles. You can play aggressively and try to overwhelm the enemies with powerful attacks, or you take a more careful approach and use the Counter-Strike deck, and block and counter-strike the enemy into oblivion. Each deck has an enhancement, which can be a movement card, the ability to heal hit points between fights, or various other things. With each deck you get about 16 cards at the beginning, but this number grows throughout each run. You can usually draw 5 cards per round, but with certain enhancements you can draw more than that. Your cards have multiple categories. A deck can hold attack cards, blocks, counterattacks, movement cards, and so on. There's also tricking cards like throwing darts and pocket sand to stun the enemy for 1 round. Over the course of a run, you can upgrade these cards and make them stronger in attack or reduce their cost and action points. Within the stages, you're moving from one end of the map, themed after a criminal organization, to the other, stopping at points representing different kinds of encounters. That could be one of the aforementioned fights in tight spaces, a healing pit stop, or a gym. Sometimes it's a special encounter in the style of a choose-your-own-adventure story, a dialogue choice, or a special challenge. Your chosen path often branches out into 2 possible encounters. You have to think ahead and plan your route based on what rewards and challenges you want. At the end of each stage, there's a boss waiting for you. You as the agent have health points, momentum, combo, and block. Block works like a shield and needs to be peeled off before the enemy can do any damage to your health, unless they can ignore block. This works the same way for the enemies. At the beginning of the game, you have the amount of 3 momentum, or action points, at your disposal, but this number can be increased temporarily, meaning for 1 fight, or permanently for the rest of the run. Using most cards costs you at least 1 momentum. Once the momentum runs out, you can't do anything but end the round. Your combo meter increases by 1 with each attack used. Each movement card, however, diminishes the combo by 1. With some special attacks, like the Hammer Fist, you do more damage the higher the combo is. A certain amount of combo is needed to use devastating finishing moves or special attacks. For instance, the combo finisher needs 3 combo, but it moves you 1 or 2 tiles towards the enemy and does 8 damage. These special attacks, however, reduce your combo to 0, and you have to start anew. This means you have to plan ahead and build your combo meter. I didn't appreciate this mechanic at first, because I played the balanced deck exclusively, and I moved a lot, losing most of my earlier build-up combo. Because of that, I found this mechanic more prohibitive to play. But what's clever is that, while these cards require more initial setup, they don't use any of your momentum. In other words, this mechanic uses a classic fighting game method of building up a meter and then using it at the end. Combos therefore are another tactical option, and especially with other decks than the balanced all-rounder deck, it's an extremely useful mechanic. The enemies you'll be fighting are varied, and every enemy type has its own attacks and behaviors, making most of the encounters unique. As the stages go on and rise in difficulty, the quantity of enemies increases, and the stages resemble a battlefield. Some enemies push you if you get into their space. Others can jump over 3 tiles towards you. Some can dodge your first attack, and others counter all incoming attacks. You can get info on which enemy will attack first and what their capabilities are by mousing over them. You have the chance to cut a fight short and defeat a stronger enemy by throwing them out of the stage. As the name suggests, the fights take place in tight spaces. Small grid-based rooms, usually styled around an alleyway, a prison cell, or sometimes even a moving train. These rooms have entrances and exits, and you can push, kick, shove, or throw enemies off the stage, similar to a ring out in combat sports or fighting games. However, the enemy can do the same onto you, so you better watch out. Being thrown out of the stage means death and a game over. You can also push enemies into objects, which deals 4 damage, but you have to be careful, because they can and will do the same onto you. The most fun, however, comes from repositioning yourself or the enemy in such a way that the enemies clubber each other. You see, if a gunman is standing there with his finger on the trigger, or a brawler is ready to throw a powerful haymaker, they will do so at the end of the round, regardless of who's at the other end of that attack. Your ultimate goal in each fight is to deal as much damage as possible while taking little to no damage yourself, as your health won't automatically replenish between fights. There are, however, a variety of ways to replenish your health. One way are the aforementioned health clinics. Then there's protection missions in which you have to protect an ambassador from dying. Other missions have an informant disguised as one of the enemies. In those missions, the goal is to eliminate all other enemies but him. The informant will attack you to keep his cover, so you're still under pressure in these missions. Succeeding in these protection missions grants you 15 hit points. The third way to heal yourself is special and rare healing card. Beating a boss in a certain amount of rounds also heals 20 of your hit points. And last but not least, there's 2 enhancements you can pick. One heals you in between encounters, and the other heals you when you skip a reward after an encounter. Within a stage, you get information on how many enemies you have to defeat, what the specific challenge of that particular encounter is, and what the rewards are. If you'll succeed in that challenge, you get money, and sometimes an upgrade in health, combo meter, and most importantly, in momentum. After every encounter, no matter how successful it was, you get to choose one of 3 cards to add to your deck. Each come from a total pool of previously unlocked cards that are not restricted to any particular style. You can also skip this reward, as you don't want specific cards in your deck, because they can mess up your strategic flow. The goal is not to create the perfect deck, but to create a deck that serves you in any situation. Beating a stage boss gives you an enhancement as a reward which can substantially improve your game. You rely greatly on these rewards around the endgame missions, and most of your powerful cards should be upgraded by that point in the game. But even these enhancement rewards can be skipped if they don't fit the strategy you're going for. On your way through every stage, except for the last one, you have a choice between the gym and the health clinic. This is where you spend your money at. In the clinics, you can heal yourself for various points, increase your max health, or get rid of permanent injuries. Healing and increasing health is doubled in price after 1 use. I guess this is supposed to prevent you from becoming too strong at an early stage in the game, but it feels like punishment. In the gym, you can buy new cards or upgrade your current ones. Upgrading a card doubles the cost of upgrades for all other cards in the gym, so you can't upgrade too many cards at once and break the game's difficulty. You can also get rid of a card in your deck. This is a useful feature, but way too expensive for my taste, because once a card is in your deck, there's only a few ways of getting rid of it, and one of them costs you $40 at the gym. There are enhancements to reduce that cost, however. In summary, Fights in Tight Spaces perfectly captures the feeling of being an action movie secret agent and hand-to-hand combat specialist who reads the movements of his opponents before dodging and dispatching said opponents with clinical precision. The art style is minimalistic because the game is made by a smaller studio, but they chose the right amount of detail and style to portray their vision. Most objects in the environment are white or gray. They represent the supposed objects just enough without being distracting, while the player character is portrayed through shades of black and white that gives the game an elegant and classy look. The combat animations look stylish and impactful, and blood adds the layer of danger to the moves. The biggest upside of this style is that everything in the game is very readable and easily grasped. That goes for the UI as well. It's sleek, it's elegant, it's beautiful, and most importantly, it does its job well. The sound effects of the game are precise, impactful, and crunchy. You feel every strike that you land and every mistake that you make. The knife attacks of the enemies sound painful. And gunshots sound exaggerated, yet realistic enough. This brings me to the soundtrack. The music is great. It has a lot of oomph to it, using strong beats while still having an ethereal quality to it. The music is subdued and repetitive enough, so it doesn't grate on your nerves or distracts you from a tactical decision that you have to make. Yet at the same time, the tracks are adrenaline pumping and make you want to take out a whole criminal organization all by yourself. Great work by composer Nervous Test Pilot, who also made a god-tier UNATCO theme remix. Check it out. I can't lie, Fights in Tight Spaces became one of my favorite games of all time. If I would have a top tier list, this game would easily be in my top 20, if not top 10. But why is that? The strategic gameplay combined with the martial arts action just does it for me. The sounds are crisp, the music is amazing, the bosses are challenging. In addition to that, it's a roguelite, and therefore every run feels different. But most important of all, the game has a quality that I can appreciate more as an adult than I could have as a teenager or younger man. The game respects my time, and your time for that matter. Encounters are quick, and if you're short on time, you can play for a couple of minutes or half an hour. The game autosaves, and none of your progress gets lost. This is great for people who just want to relax and play a couple of rounds. The story's not really existing, just a couple of lines of go there, do that. Nothing taxing for your mind. I can wholeheartedly recommend this game. If the price is too high for you, just wait for a sale and enjoy this great title. I want to add one more thing to this review. I've been playing Fights in Tight Spaces for a while now, and as I was playing this game, I've had different ideas. I thought to myself, how cool would it be if you could play this as an RPG with a whole party of fighters? Especially as a Japanese-style role-playing game. This would be great, I thought to myself. Well, the developers granted my wish, it seems, and released a demo. Knights in Tight Spaces is exactly what I was looking for. The gameplay is that of Fights in Tight Spaces verbatim, with the exception that you have a party of fighters instead of one player character. You can, however, find side quests and equip your fighters with different weapons, armor, and accessories. As in Fights in Tight Spaces, you will have a fork in the road and have to choose your path. In the demo, that only leads to small changes, however. When it comes to gameplay, the biggest difference is the fact that you control a party of characters. Your action points are spread between all fighters. You first have to choose a fighter and then give the command to them. If two or more fighters stand next to an enemy and one of them attacks, the other one attacks automatically as well, not costing you a turn. I like this mechanic, but it also made my runs a little bit too easy. This brings me to my criticism. I have two gripes with this game. I really don't like the graphical style. The brilliant thing about Fights in Tight Spaces art style was that it was easy to read. Enemies were color-coded, and you could read the game from afar, or even if you squint. Knights in Tight Spaces has a different art style. Everything looks more grimy, washed up, and diluted. I know that's on purpose because it's a fantasy medieval world, but I would argue the game reduces functionality by adding detail. A lesser, desaturated red may look cool, but the vibrant full reds of Fights in Tight Spaces showed me what type of enemy it was and where they were in relation to the player. Because the backgrounds were white, you've had a full picture of the whole encounter and where everything was at first glance. Knights in Tight Spaces has color background with muted colors and enemies with muted colors, which means the enemies blend into the background and the whole art style appears inferior because of that. There is a video by Egoraptor where he explains the difference between the art style of Castlevania 1 versus Castlevania 2. In this video, Egoraptor talks about how the color scheme of the first game is superior to the second game because it pops and makes the game more alive. And this color scheme reminds me of that. The characters look like the texture was drawn with a pencil. Again, going for a late medieval illustration style, but it just doesn't look good in my opinion. Unfortunately, the illustrations for the cards suffered the same fate. The cards and fights in tight spaces were very clear and easy to read, because they used the models of the enemies and the player character, and they had a white background. Simple, easy to read, perfect. The new cards have a background and use colors in the illustrations. The cards are color-coded, but they have a desaturated pastel kind of look and are therefore more difficult to read. My other gripe is the story and the dialogue. It's difficult to guess what the story could be because I've only played the demo, but I think it could be really interesting. Imagine something like medieval espionage, a conspiracy or something like that. The dialogue, as for now, is horrendous. It's this cringy, self-aware, trying to be funny while failing at it type of modern writing that I despise. As I said before, this is a demo, so I hope the current dialogue is a placeholder. Because if it's not, I will skip all of it. Despite my gripes with this demo, I have really high hopes for Knights in Tight Spaces, and I would love to see this game succeed. Dear developers, if you're watching this, please rework the dialogue and the UI, make everything easy to read, and improve the art. You made one for the ages. I really hope that your hands are quick, so you can catch lightning in a bottle a second time. I wish you all the best of luck, and to everybody watching, have a great rest of your day.